Zak Bagans has made arguably one of the strangest decisions in his collection and addition to his collection in his haunted museum, as it has been announced by TMZ that he will be adding to his roster of paranormal and strange things the remains of a serial killer who goes by the name of Samuel Little. Now, if you don't know who Samuel Little is, he is probably one of the most notorious serial killers in US history. Here's a little bit about him. Samuel Little was an American serial killer of women who confessed to committing 93 murders between 1970 and 2005. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, has confirmed Little's involvement in at least 60 of the 93 confessed murders, the largest number of confirmed victims of any serial killer in United States history. Now, this man passed away back in 2020. And this was him in 2012. Now, there's a whole biography, obviously, about him. There's documentaries being made about him. And now, strangely, Zak Bagans has decided that he will be putting this man's remains on display for the world to see at his haunted museum, which I don't know. When I saw this, I was a bit like, this doesn't sit right. And the reason that I feel like this doesn't quite sit right is because this man confessed to the murder of at least 93 women, right? At least. There could have been more, but that's what he confessed to. And Zak Bagans has just taken his remains, put him on display for the world to kind of just look at, like he's being paraded in this museum. And almost, you don't give people like that the level of, you don't see people talking about other notorious serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, and putting them on display. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't quite sit right, and it feels a little bit like a misjustice to the victims and the families of the victims for this man who, took their loved ones to just be put on display for the world to see. I don't know, it feels a little bit insensitive, but let's read through the TMZ article. So it says, Zak Bagans' disturbing collection of memorabilia just got even creepier, as he's revealed he now owns the remains of the notorious serial killer Samuel Little. Now, he doesn't actually own them, I don't think. It does talk later in the article about how he's basically like leasing them indefinitely from the person who does own them, but we'll get onto that in just a moment. The Ghost Adventures star tells TMZ his haunted Las Vegas museum is now home of the fully sealed remains of Little, one of the most prolific serial killers in US history with 93 confessed victims. And of course, I think this is like where his remains are. I think it's his ashes. I can't be certain, but I'm going to assume that that's the case, especially as it says that it's the crematory of something right there. Anyway, Zak tells us over the weekend he also received Little's portfolio of hand-drawn portraits of his victims, along with his personal belongings from the time of his death. That includes everything from clothes and shoes to a TV, hygiene items, and even his art kit. Again, it just doesn't sit right that he's got portraits of this man's victims just kind of put up on display. It doesn't, I don't know, it really, this feels a little bit weird. He snagged the haunted hall from Little's biographer Gillian Lauren, who's loaning them to the museum indefinitely. So, there you go. So she's loaning them to the museum. So he doesn't actually own them. I think she still owns them, ultimately. But she went on to make a few things. So Gillian spent tons of time with Little while penning Behold the Monster, confronting America's most prolific serial killer. And when he died in 2020, he named her his sole beneficiary, as he didn't have any family. And this is Gillian right here. Zak is going to display everything inside his serial killer exhibit room behind actual prison bars, next to Charles Manson's ashes and bone fragments. The display will go up tomorrow. This is a little video that we'll take a look at in just a moment that Gillian made. But Gillian kept all of the items in her home she shared with her husband, Weezer bassist Scott Schreiner, but she's relieved to finally ship out all his stuff. After all, it's hard to unwind when your decor includes serial killers' keepsakes. And then this is the little video, and talking about the time that she first met Sam Little. Here we go.
And he said, you.
It'd be nice if that was.
And I was like, it's gonna happen. He said, you. And I was like, it's gonna happen now. He said, you are my angel come to visit me from heaven. What do you want to know? It was almost like I couldn't move. I'm processing the fact that I've really never sat in front of a murderer before. And the first thing that struck me was his eyes. And what I see is, like, there's nothing behind them. There's nothing. And he said...
There you go. So there's a little bit about her experience with him and stuff like that. So that was Gillian, the person who is now loaning the items over to Zak Bagans. But I don't know, man. It's like I say, it just doesn't quite sit right. And it seems to not be sitting right with a lot of other people. As I went on to the subreddit or r/Ghost Adventures where this was actually posted, just popped up on my feed as I'd read the TMZ article. People saying that's a bit weird. Someone else went on to say, I'm all for Zak's love for macabre. There we go. But I just can't find it in me thinking that collecting all this serial killer's memorabilia is okay for his mentality or the museum. And I've been interested in true crime my whole life, but the energy in those rooms is different. And don't get me started on the Kansas City butcher room on having an actual picture of the victims. As an SA survivor myself, I was not ready at all and found the room to be extremely triggering. It just feels like it goes in a different and more sinister direction of feeding more energy to the evil of those people's actions instead of the overall goal of allowing people the opportunity to confront the unknown/supernatural. And I completely agree. This is where my issue lies. Not issue, because who am I to have an issue with what Zak Bagans does in his haunted museum, right? But it just doesn't seem to sit right when you think about that. There's a lot of, with the paranormal stuff, right? You can put that on display because, people are intrigued by that. There's no confirmed victim of the paranormal, right? In a very, technical speak, but to have like a serial killer district of your haunted museum is very, it's an interesting route to go down. But when it's done, it has to be done right, because there are ultimately victims to these people. These serial killers stole the lives of family members, loved ones, partners, parents, children, right? The people that passed away were someone's kids. And to kind of put that man who took those lives and took that away from people and put it on display for the world to see, almost as if it's like, look at this person, look at what this person did, even though it's not going to be jovial, it will be like, look at how sick and twisted this person was or whatever. It just doesn't seem right. It seems like it's a bit of a injustice to the families and to the victims themselves who had their lives taken away from them by someone. And then Zak Bagans comes along and is like, do you know what I'll do? I'll take the portraits that he drew of these victims. I'll take all of his memorabilia. I'll take all of his clothing, and I'll take his ashes or his remains, and I'm going to put them on display for the world to see. People will pay me to see this guy. And it's a bit like, it comes across as a bit insensitive, in my opinion. And it just, I don't know. They told me when it was for the paranormal effects and the serial killer items hold, but it has to be a line where it becomes a bit too much of this stuff rather than the paranormal objects. I completely agree with that, actually. I think Zak is losing it, and he is not the same Zak that he was with Nick. I mean, we all know that. He is an evil energy collector that gains money by sharing it. It's one thing to not believe that this energy exists beyond Earth and just a collector piece, totally different to someone who knows, experiences, and or believes this dark energy is still very much around and can devastate someone's life still. The interaction feeds it, offering the community with this museum. I have this love-hate with Zak. I'm fascinated with it all too. But I have seen and been through enough to back off. He is also very much shares the belief in its energy existence. I think he's lost himself to the dark. This is people trying to justify this stuff, and this is where I'm a bit like, I just find it so weird as well. I'm like, you know, Zak's not condemned to evil spirits. Zak is a businessman. He's a very clever and very savvy businessman at the end of the day. He knows what's going to make money. And in his haunted museum, he's got the whole haunted artifacts. He's got all of this stuff that, you know, whether you believe in it or not, regardless. And then he's like, how do we make this better? Because it's all, you've always got to evolve and make things better. And he's like, I'll put some serial killer stuff in there. But by doing that, I feel like you kind of undermine the victims a little bit. And their families. There's some other ones as well, which were just... It's getting weird and unethical now. Again, I completely agree. By the way, this is just on the Zak Bagans, on the Ghost Adventures subreddit. This is usually full of the... This is extremely distasteful. This is usually full of the fans. Like, the people in here are like fangirls or fanboys for Zak Bagans. But, you know you've crossed a line when even your biggest fans are like, yeah, this is getting weird now. But I wanted to put this across to you. Do you think that this is a good idea for Zak Bagans? Personally, I don't. I don't like the idea. I don't like that this man's being... to me, if you put someone or something on display, it kind of... How do I describe it? You kind of like... You put it out there for people to take a look at, to take photos of. Like... someone like Samuel Little, who took 93 lives, at least 93 lives, right? He does not deserve to be remembered. He should be forgotten, in my opinion. Like, if you're going to do something as cruel as murder and take 93 lives, like, you should not be remembered. But Zak Bagans, putting him in one of the most notorious haunted museums in the world, where thousands of people go through the door per day, you've got his memory will live on, and he will be remembered in history. And he will go to, he's already in the history books because, for the worst reasons possible. But it kind of comes across like it's a bit like, you're putting this guy on a pedestal. Don't like it. That's just my opinion, though. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. While you're down there, be sure to jump to get the hell out of that like button if you have not already. And until next time, I'll speak to you later. Peace.